So God sometimes introduces us to an idea of something. It does not mean that we're going to get it overnight. It does not mean that we're going to get it in the next year. It does not mean we're going to get it in the next 2 years. However, with that, we have to believe that God keeps his promises. Hi y'all, welcome back to another Bible study video. Episode 2. This week is actually going to be a pretty good lesson, so I'm excited about this, and I hope you guys enjoy, and let me know what you think about it in the comments. All right, let's get started. So for those of you who watched the last video, then you know that I just finished the book of Genesis about a week ago, and now I am diving into the book of Exodus. Exodus means a mass departure of people. It's the book where God uses Moses to free his people, which were the Israelites, also known as the Hebrews, from slavery. Moses is introduced on the scene. So a backstory about Moses. Moses was born to Hebrew parents, and during the time that he was born, the Pharaoh commanded that all boys that were born at the time must be killed. And that was due to his fear of them being outnumbered as they get older. So we'll dive deep into this as we break down the scriptures of what happens with Moses. So right now, we know that Moses in the land of Midian. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. If that's not, I'm sorry. So God appears to Moses in this burning bush, and says in chapter 4, he says, when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bushes, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place which you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then we fast forward and we read through verse 8 of chapter 3. It says, so I have come down to rescue them and bring them out of the land of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good land. God goes and tells Moses, he said, you're going to go to Pharaoh and tell him to release your people. Moses said, hold on, God, wait, me? He said, I'm slow of speech. I have an eloquent tongue. How am I qualified? Also to mention, Moses was 80 at the time, and you can find this in chapter 7, verse 7. It says Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron, his brother, was 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. So it just goes to show you that God can use anyone, no matter the age. And so we know that Moses was a murderer. However, God still saw fit for him to use him. And so as he sent Moses on this mission to complete, Moses is like, okay, so how they gonna believe that you sent me? And like, what am I supposed to tell them? And God says, I am who I am, the father of Isaac, the father of Jacob, the father of Abraham, the one who keeps his promises. So then God goes on and he shows Moses these signs. He first shows Moses, he has a staff, and God says, throw the staff on the ground. So Moses throws the staff on the ground and it turns into a snake. Then God said, pick it back up. Moses picked it back up, it turned back into a rod. Then God shows Moses another sign, sign number 2. He says, all right, put your hand in your cloak. And Moses put his hand in his cloak, and once he took it out, his hand was leprous. And then he put it back in. I said, all right, now take it back out. And God returned his hand back to the initial flesh, which it was like the rest of his body. Then God gives Moses a third sign. He said, the Israelites don't believe you after the second sign, then take some water from the river, pour it on dry ground, and it will turn into blood. So then Moses is like, okay, God, thank you, but get somebody else to do it. I don't think I'm the one. So then God says, okay, well, let's get your older brother Aaron. He will be the mouth for you, and you will be like the God to him. So it just goes to show you that God can use each and every one of us. We don't have to look a certain way. We don't have to be a certain age. So it's kind of a way to apply to our everyday life, in a sense where the Holy Spirit lives within us and it works within us. So when you are on an assignment and when God instructs you, there are going to be some things that you have to sacrifice, whether there's relationships, whether there's jobs, whether there's a lifestyle that you desire or a lifestyle that you are currently living, something that you are going to have to sacrifice to peel that layer of flesh that's holding you back from reaching the full potential of what God is using you for. After all of this, Moses goes and he goes to Pharaoh. He said, hey, him and Aaron said, hey, let my people go. And Pharaoh's like, I don't know your God. Who is your God? Like, what? And so they show the signs that they started off with the first sign, turning the rod into a snake. And so at the time, witchcraft and sorcery and all of those things, like spells, were really big in the Egyptian community. So they said, oh, we can do the same thing. So Pharaoh, which is the king of Egypt, called all of his magicians, his sorcerers, and said, look what they did, come and do it, we can do the same thing. So they threw their rod on the ground and it turned into a snake. But the one thing about God is that God is powerful. God is powerful because the snake that Aaron threw down, it ate the staff that Pharaoh and his people had. So it just shows you that God is stronger and bigger and more powerful than witchcraft, sorcery, any type of curses that people think they have over your life. He's stronger than generational curses. Anything we can do through Christ. Philippians 4:16, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. So we have to give ourselves the space to really let God use us. It's not like when Moses first go, Pharaoh lets his people go, or the Israelites are just so hopeful in Moses that, you know, they will be free. No, God tests their faith. He builds their endurance. He introduces them to the idea of freedom, right? So God sometimes introduces us to an idea of something. It does not mean that we're going to get it overnight. It does not mean that we're going to get it in the next year. It does not mean we're going to get it in the next 2 years. However, with that, we have to believe that God keeps his promises, which he did. He came back because he made this promise to Abraham. You see this in Genesis chapter 15 verses 13 through 14, where God promises that he will free Abraham's people from slavery eventually. So he comes back and he freed them. It's years and decades and centuries later, and even when he does show up in the form of Moses, they're not free right away. If anything, they're more troubled. We saw in chapter 5 verses 19 through 21, the people said, God, Moses, ever since you have came and said the Lord is supposed to free us, it seemed like we are in more trouble. We got to work harder. They have given us more work and they making us work double just because you came and said that you about to free us. So now we on Pharaoh's bad side. So then Moses, he's also getting frustrated because he's just doing what God told him to do. He like, look, all right, God, I'm about to go back to God. I gotta go have a conversation with him. So Moses go back and have a conversation with God. And that brings me to another point. You can have a conversation with God. Prayer does not look like one way. Having a conversation with God does not look one way. You can say, look, God, I'm tired. I don't understand. You have given me this vision. However, I'm not seeing the fruits of my labor. I'm not seeing what's going on in this season. So I need you to show me something. Give me a sign that you are who you say you are. You are going to do what you say you are going to do. So the one thing about God, God keeps his promise. So after Moses goes to God and he's like, look, God, some gotta pull, because it seems like since I've come, the Israelites seem to be in more trouble. And then God says in chapter 6, he says, look, Pharaoh, he giving me a hard time, but I got y'all. Just like I said, I got y'all. He says that in verse 6. He says, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. And I will bring you the land I swore with uplifted hand to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord. That's powerful. God says he's going to do what he said he's going to do. And we have to believe it, even when times seem uncertain, even when times seem as if you just like, okay, God, I've been working at the same thing for 5 years. Yes, I've seen some type of progress, but I'm not where I want to be. What's the holdup? What do I need to do? Why did you even give me this vision anyway if you was going to keep me in the same predicament for the next 5 years? And God says, look, didn't I tell you that I am who I say I am? I keep my promises. So as we continue to read through Exodus, we are going to see how God keeps his promises and delivers his people. But I want to bring out 5 points that I got from this message of Exodus chapter 3 through verse 7. Point number 1. God assures us who he is, and we saw that multiple times as he was talking. I am who I am Lord, I am God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, I am your God. He assures us plenty of times. So when you are feeling doubtful, open your word and you will see where God assures you that he will not leave you nor forsake you. Point number 2, God keeps his promises. God made these promises back in Genesis to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that he will free their people, their generations from slavery. years, I think it was like 400 years, God showed up. He goes and you see it in scripture where he says, I have seen and heard the cries and the struggles of my people, and I'm here to rescue them. I am here to deliver them. And yes, it may not happen overnight where God promise is revealed to us, but it will come into fruition. Point number 3, God is powerful. We see this as he shows the signs to Moses, and then we also see this when Aaron goes and shows the sign to Pharaoh, as well as Pharaoh's magicians and sorcerers of Egyptian descent. And God's sign outdid Pharaoh's little snake and little rod, and it just shows that God is more powerful than what we can even imagine. So there's no need to worry. Or God protects us, and we see this in chapter 4 and 19 of Exodus, where God says, go back to the land and free them, because we know that Moses had fled the land because Pharaoh wanted to kill him for killing a fellow Egyptian. And so God said, go back. But everyone that wanted to kill you, they are now dead. So when God sends us back to places that we feel did us wrong or no longer serve who we are, we have to trust and believe that God has already paved that way for us. He has already, painted that picture. There's no need for us to worry, because his energy protects us always. And then point number 5 is God will test your faith. And we see here that it took God a while to show up for these Israelites. They had been enslaved for a very, very long time. And it just shows us that when we are in our season of waiting, but we're still working and trying to figure out why things haven't played out how we want them to play out, we have to remember that God keeps his promises, but he also tests our faith. He builds endurance within us, and as he builds that endurance within us, we have to be aware that faith the size of a mustard seed will take us a long way. So while sometimes it seems as if God may have forgotten about us, in reality, he's just building us up. He's building us up to be that strong warrior that he knows that we are. But we just have to have faith in knowing that God will fulfill his promises. So as you guys take this Bible study and apply it to your everyday lives, let me know, what do you feel your season of waiting has taught you? Have you seen God show up in ways that you didn't even imagine? Are you still waiting on him? Do you feel as if your prayer is being heard? Where are you in your journey of seeking freedom, or being on the journey of God using you? God came to Moses. He could have did anybody else. Moses' son, somebody that was a little younger, but he said, I'm gonna choose somebody that's 80 and 83 years old. He's a murderer. He's not perfect. He's a little bit of disobedient, because God almost killed him once, but his wife saved him. God can still use each and every one of us. Don't you ever feel like you are not qualified for God's assignment. Whatever it is that God puts on your heart, go for it. But make sure that you keep him front and center, because if you notice, every time he talked to Moses, when Moses said, but God, I'm slow of speech, but God, I'm not eloquent in my tongue, God said, I'll be your mouth. I made your mouth. I made your eyes. If I wanted to make you mute, I can make you mute. Don't you ever forget the power of me. So as you continue on this instructed path of life, remember that you are qualified. So I love you guys, and I hope that this message resonated with y'all. Let me know in the comments what y'all think. We're going to continue to talk about Moses, the book of Exodus. I think Exodus has 40 chapters, so we are only on chapter 8, I think. So we are going to continue to keep diving into Exodus and seeing how God eventually frees the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt. I love you guys, and until next time, bye.